This video is sponsored by Into the AM. There is a legion of Chaos Space Marines that I have never collected, but everyone else has. Nick tried to collect these guys, Sean is trying to collect these guys, and I feel like it kind of makes sense. The 15th Legion, the 1,000 Suns. I remember back in the day at the Warhammer store picking out my first army, I went with Necrons. But the 1,000 Suns make a lot of sense because you see your options in front of you and you see the Space Marines and they're blue and fine. And then you see the cool spiky Chaos Space Marines. But then you see Egyptian Chaos Space Marines. I feel like you gotta go with the Egyptian Chaos Space Marines. Nick has lent me one of his old figures to try some painting on. And I'm really excited because I get to use magenta. I mean, I feel like I could always use magenta because you can paint whatever you want, but I feel like it makes sense on the 1,000 Suns. This is a mini Nick painted back in the day, and it's really good. This one here with the Warp Flamer, he took a little bit further with the highlighting. This is the classic Rubik Marine done up to the 9s. It's pretty slick, but it's not how I want to do it. I threw him up on a painting handle and then got to work getting a base ready for this fella. Rubik stand on the 32mm base, and to get him suitably chaosy and magic-y, I glued on a medieval Street of Chaos topper from Zabavka Workshop. We sell these printed for you on EonsOfBattle.com. Sean uses the Ruined City Empire toppers for his Emperor's Children army, and this one I've got here has a lovely Chaos Star erupting out of the ground, perfect for the magical mayhem the sorcerers of the 1,000 Suns bring to the battlefield. I'm gonna start with the base. This will give me some ideas of how I want to tackle the rubric. I started out with the black prime and then a dry brushing of some dark blue. This will leave the black in the recesses and start to give the ground a magical hue. Then I gave it another lighter dry brushing of a lighter, more saturated blue, just dusting this on so it hit the raised areas in the cobblestone. Now to start to make the chaos symbol glow. I mixed up some white paint, flow improver, and I dripped this into the cracks. This flowed all along the symbol, and I also let it spill into the cracks and crevices in the cobblestone. Once that was dry, I used my airbrush with some white paint to do a little object source lighting, dusting this over the symbol and letting it spill onto the surrounding base. Now that the brightness is there, I need to tint it a color. I put some magenta speed paint into my airbrush, thinned it down, and then sprayed this over the white so that the star is glowing pink. I dripped some more white paint over the symbol so that it was glowing white hot in the brightest spots, and I did a little bit of dry brushing around the points to make these spots brighter. Now it's looking colorful, but it's still a little cold. I grabbed some yellow paint and dusted this over the pink. This tinted the pink a little, and it made all the white into yellow, and now it has a nice warm, crazy, magical glow. Now I can't wait to take these colors and use them on the rubric. But first, do you need a spare shirt because you're likely to get a little messy at the 4th of July barbecue? Well, today's sponsor, Into the AM, is here to help. Into the AM offers a huge selection of every kind of clothing you could need. Their unique style and fit are the perfect way to help you stand out as the coolest guy in the crowd. Shirts, denim jeans, joggers, briefs, flannels, jackets, and the thing I love the most, their graphic t-shirts. I love all their shirts like the Infinity Explorer graphic tee. This one has a sweet melancholy feel to it. Bourbon Voyage pullover hoodie. This one's really nice and warm. Heart of the Wild graphic tee. My Smoky Mountain parents really love this one. And the Space Saga vintage tee. It's got that retro vibe. All their graphics are incredibly fun, vibrant, and stand out. Their graphic tee selection is huge with the right design just for you, and every week they're adding more and more to choose from. Right now they're offering a big 4th of July sale. Their deals are positively explosive with discounts up to 60% off their selection. You won't want to miss out getting your chic new wardrobe for a price you can afford. If you use my link in the description, you can get an additional 10% off of that. 70% off your new favorite shirt sounds like a good deal to me. Whatever you feel like showing off this 4th of July, whether deep sea or nature, Asian fusion, or astronauts doing just about anything, there's something cool for you to pick up this holiday, so don't miss out. That is a warpy infused base. It kind of reminds me of the crazy energy effect on the Mutalith Vortex Beast, which Mutalith Vortex Beast, really annoying unit. I've played against it a bunch of times, and it's just a big tanky monster that shoots really good and fights really good. And if it ever gets within 6 inches of anything, it just does mortal wounds to that thing. It's a really frustrating unit. The 1,000 Suns in general are kind of just a frustrating army to deal with because rubrics are really tanky and everything in the army, except maybe the Zangors, are just really good. Nick's Rubik Marine is done up in the classic colors, and the classic colors do look really nice, but I feel like if you're doing the super psychic 1,000 Suns, I feel like you gotta do a little something special. And I got something special planned for the eyeballs. I wanna give him some nice glowing eyeballs, but right now as the model is, the eyes are pretty recessed into his face. This means no matter how bright I make his eyes, they'll always be in shadow and look kinda dark. I can fix this though by giving him some proud eyes. I mixed up some green stuff and made some tiny balls and shoved them into his face. I used my knife to squish the putty into his sockets and then cut away the excess. Then I used a silicone sculpting brush to press around his sockets to give him some eyes that are sticking out. This way his eyes will always be catching the light instead of hidden, and it'll look really magical. I filled in the eyes of his bird head backpack as well, and now this fella is ready for a J take. I didn't bother priming his body, he's already got a coat of paint anyway, and instead I started with a base coat of dark blue, the same blue I used on the base. And then I used a bright saturated blue on his head and shoulders, using the airbrush to blast on some nice spots. Then I pulled him off the base, flipped him upside down, and sprayed magenta from below so that he's got a two-tone look. He's a really dark marine, and now it's time to add some color. I set up my palette with some gold, then my blue and magenta. I mixed these colors into the gold to make a warm gold and a cold gold. I added a little bit of purple into the gold to darken it a bit, and then I put it on the mini, following the airbrush base coats, hitting the trim on the purple parts with my warm color and putting the cold gold over the blue parts. Rubik Marines have a lot of trim. They might be the trimmiest of all Chaos Space Marines. I used a little bit of pure gold to highlight each section, and I really like how subtle the trim is looking. I feel like on a normal rubric, the high contrast makes the Marine look really toyish, where mixing the base coat colors into the trim helps it feel more natural. Once I had both colors in their place, I used some pure gold and silver paint, and I used these to do some edge highlights, using silver on the cold gold sections and bright gold on the magenta E-gold. With the trim done, it was looking good, but I feel like the magenta isn't pulling its weight. I brushed some magenta onto the bottom half of the Marine using a damp brush to push around the paint to get some nice gradients coming from the bottom of each armor panel, and then softening as it moves up the mini. And I did just a little bit of highlighting on his crazy headdress, putting on a little bit of blue to make these areas brighter. So what is a Rubik Marine? Well, back in the Dizzy with 1,000 Suns, they had a little problem about mutation. A lot of their psychers were sprouting horrible mutations, and to try to fix this, Ahriman casted the Rubik spell. And this spell actually fixed all of their psychers and supercharged them. But unfortunately, everybody who wasn't a psyker essentially became welded shut in their Rubik armor, and they kind of lost their soul and essence. But they became invincible. Somewhat invincible, effectively immortal. Every single Rubik Marine that has ever existed still exists, because even if you do manage to puncture that armor and let out their essence and effectively kill them, a powerful enough psyker can recall their essence and reforge their armor and put them right back on the front lines. These guys are a problem. And speaking of being a problem, in-game, I have faced these guys many a time, and they are annoying. This guy right here has the bolter, but they can all take warp flamers. And warp flamers, you know, they're nothing super special. D6 attacks, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1. But they all get to have them. A full brick of 10 is, on average, 30 shots that are skipping right past the hit and going straight into the wound. And Tzeentch has granted the Rubik Marines many ways of improving the wound roll. And this gets even grosser with a little rule called Overwatch. Overwatch is a stratagem that lets you shoot in your opponent's turn, and it basically gives you one last chance to shoot before your enemy closes in. And usually it's not that big a deal because you can only hit on 6s. But where the problem comes in is that Rubik Marines don't roll to hit. They bypass the to hit and go straight to the wound roll. So that is, on average, 30 shots just hitting you, and it can spike as high as 60. You don't ever want to move within 12 inches of a Rubik Marine squad. These guys are kind of a one-trick pony, but it's a really good trick. To make my fella a little more magical, I dusted on some more magenta paint from below. This tinted all the colors I already have on him, and then I took some Raging Sea, a blue speed paint, and dusted this on from above to further tint my guy and bring his colors closer together. And you know what else could use a dusting of magenta? That's right, EonsOfBattle.com. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find merch like our EOB dice, wet palettes, water slide decals, and basing toppers and bits. It's also the best way to support us with memberships. Each month, members get a credit that they can use on our new monthly terrain packs or any previous pack we have ever made. This June, we made an absolute monstrosity. What better way to show off that a battle is serious business than a god machine already dead on the ground? These shattered remains create thematic line of sight blocking and ruined terrain perfect for grimdark games. With a titanic rigor mortis claw, silent cannon, and lifeless eyes, this beast won't be doing much other than looking pretty while those who are still kicking win the day. This ruined titan fits right at home with our previous crash spaceship terrain. I want these colors a little darker and more desaturated in preparation to give the trim a little extra magical touch. Turbo Dork Paint, Tin Star, and all that glitters. These are the brightest, shiniest metallic paints I have ever found. I took the gold and put this over the gold parts of his trim, putting it on sparingly, doing some edge highlights and picking out the ray spots, and then doing the exact same thing with the silver, hitting the top half of my Marine and getting him super shiny and glittery. Doing just a little dry brushing to lay down a thicker layer of this stuff on his headdress and backpack. Now my Marine armor is done, it's time to pick out the money makers, his eyes. On all of them, I threw on some white paint base coats, and I also glazed this over the runes of his bolter. Now for the airbrush, I'm replicating exactly what I did on the base. I very carefully brushed some white paint over his eyes and bolter to make them glowing, and then I dusted this with a little bit of magenta to tint them. This was nerve-wracking, it's hard to be this accurate with the airbrush, but going slow and steady, I got it in all the right spots. I went over the eyeballs again with some more white paint, and then I threw some yellow paint into my airbrush and dusted this over to give these parts a magical molten look. This way, he'll match the base perfectly, like the same warp energies that are destroying the landscape are the same ones animating this Marine. I held him up to the base to see what parts of him are directly over the chaos symbols, and then sprayed him with white paint right where it needs to go, hitting these spots with the yellow to show the energy reflecting onto him. Now he's ready to stand, I rolled up some green stuff and put some small balls onto his feet so that I can really squish him down onto the base, and there'll be plenty of points of contact. With him standing, all that was left was hitting the rim of the base with some black paint. Boom! Thousand Sun. I painted this guy up a little different than the standard box art with the bright, perfect blue, gold, and yellow. But I don't really love the blue, gold, and yellow, the super clean look, because I feel like it makes them look too important. The Rubik Marines are almost endless spells from Age of Sigmar. They're just a weapon. There is nothing going on under that mask. If you didn't give them orders, they would just stand like a statue for 1,000 years. And so I feel like I would want to see a sea of mysterious magical dudes, and that would be how I want to represent the Thousand Suns. The Thousand Suns are interesting because they were the first Chaos Space Marine subfaction to receive full Codex treatment in 2016. And just recently, they got one new miniature, the Sekitar robots, and it seems like people's opinion on them are a little bit mixed. Seems like most people don't think they look bad, it's just hard to say if they look Thousand Suns-y. And it is hard to say if they look Thousand Suns-y, because the Thousand Suns don't have much. There's Rubik Marines, there's Scarabocult Terminators, which pretty much look like Rubik Marines, and Sorcerers, who look exactly like Rubik Marines. And then there's Zangors and Melith Vortex Beast, but they're literally ripped from Age of Sigmar and shoehorned into 40k. Really, there's only those first 3 units that are the look and the soul of the Thousand Suns. And so we got these new robots, and they kind of look new and different, and they look weird. If there was a bunch of units that looked like the Sekitar robots, I think that they would really look good in a Thousand Suns army. But just being the one weird thing, they just don't really seem to fit. The Thousand Suns are one of the very few factions of Chaos Space Marines that actually like chaos. I mean, I don't think the Rubik Marines like chaos at all, but the Sorcerers love it. Let me know in the comments below what Chaos Space Marine Legion or Warband should I take a look at next, and if any of you guys are working on new armies, don't forget about the basing toppers available from EonsBattle.com. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to click the link in the description to get a cool Into the AM shirt today.